Good evening, everyone. Okay. So I'm assuming. So tonight we're going to be talking about the Spiritist consciousness. This is very, very profound theme. And then, of course, so we're going to just touch it. But hopefully, we're going to leave tonight with a decision in mind, which is to work on our consciousness in relation to our spirituality, in relation to our life, our lives' objectives and goals. No. Okay, I guess I'm going to try this one here. Okay, why talk about our consciousness? So that's a very, we learn through life that we need to know why we are listening to something, why we are trying to learn something, before we actually dive into it. So it's very important that we stop for a minute to talk about why talk about our. And by our here, we're all spiritists. And everything we're going to be talking about here, of course, applies to everyone. But I want to really touch the minds and hearts of the Spiritists, because we know better, and our responsibility is much bigger than those that don't have the same privilege, the same information that we do have. The first thing is, we are the sole responsible for our moral development. So there should be no doubt at all that there's nobody else that is responsible for our moral development. Whatever we do with our spirit, with our development, our lives, it's entirely our responsibility. So yes, we have a tendency to blame somebody else, my wife, my husband, or whatever. We may blame even spirituality, like those materialists or some other people may want to do. But at the end of the day, there's nobody else responsible for our moral development. It's us. There's no way we can get up there when we die, right? When we discarnate, and then say, well, I could have really become something much, somebody much better if it wasn't for. So there's no such a thing. We are the sole responsible. Even on those that can, that has to go through a lot of traumas because of infancy issues or whatever, still they cannot blame anybody else. So it's our responsibility. Therefore, it's our responsibility to work on it. So, and we know better, we will be judged based on our highest credentials. What does that mean? That means that the more we know, the more we're going to have to work and then transform that into something that makes us better. So, in our particular case, we are spiritists. Some of us have been here for decades, like my case. Not here, but within the doctrine. And we have all the information we need. And we have all the examples from the spirits. We have a ton of books that we have read throughout our lives. And more than anybody else, we are not going to be able to say, oh, I'm sorry, I did not know that. Because we do. Is there any doubt that time has come for great transformations in humanity? Of course, it's a tough question here. It's difficult. But there's all evidences, though there are, let's say, instead of evidence, let's say there's enormous and a number of indications that time has come for what the spirits have been advising us for long, particularly over the last decade, starting with Joanna de Angelis in 2006 with this big article called The Great Transition. And then a lot of messages have been coming from the spirits, alerting us that, hey, it's getting close. So no better time for us to think about how prepared we want to be for the transition. by the way, there's a lot of people, particularly in the scientific world, that they say there's no obvious, at least, answer to how humanity will transform itself and become what it's supposed to be, fraternal. So market forces, politics, legislation, there's nothing that is, at this point, going to change the direction the humanity is taking. So we might as well be aware of that and do our part. Of course, we know from the spiritual side what's going on, and God is not leaving us alone. We already have been receiving those spirits that are going to help us through this. I'm sorry, but okay. Right, we've got to move from self-consciousness to spirit consciousness. So we speak a lot about being self-conscious about everything, right? So there's a lot of books that will deal with that. They create even beautiful words like a mindfulness. So be here and now, be aware of what's going on with you, learn how to read your sentiments and all that. However, we've got to move a step further, which is spirit consciousness, because at the end, what we really want to work with and on, why we are here, is our spirit. So I've got to move from ignorance here in the sense of our ignorance of life, life. What is life all about? What we are here for? Why so much suffering? Why so much difference and all that? To awareness, understand all that, and then into inner transformation. And as we're going to see a few slides down the road here, we have no choice. Now, two great reference points to help us understand this and perhaps motivate us, give us some strong indications that, yes, this is the way to go. We have Allan Kardec that said, we recognize the good spirit by his moral transformation and his effort to dominate his bad instincts. Then in the same paragraph, a little further down, he says, the good spiritist makes every effort to liberate himself and always manages to do so when their desire is stronger than, and true. Well, I on purpose highlighted by his moral transformation. So we recognize a good spiritist by his moral transformation. Kardec's not saying by his desire to transform himself, or by his intention, or by his dreams of accomplishing something. He's talking about by his transformation, meaning it's not a plan for the future. It's happening now, and it has already happened. So we know the good spiritist by his transformation, but what he represents as a spirit. We are going to talk more about what is a good spiritist. But then by then you're going to remember these words and say, okay, so Kardec said we recognize those good spiritists by the transformation he's going through and not by his project for later on in the life. Chico Xavier said, I know I'm not yet what I should be, but thank God I keep slowly but surely working toward what I should eventually become. So you see, this is Chico, and there was nobody, well, of course, excluding Jesus and few others, Chico was one of the most, humble people on earth. And he said, I'm not there yet, but thank God I'm working on it. I know one day I will become what I'm supposed to be. So that applies to all of us. That applies to all of us at different levels. We're not Chicos yet. Perhaps we are very far away from that. But the thing is, are we slowly but surely working to eventually become what we're supposed to be? This is, the lesson here from Chico. So who are we? What's in our background? Okay, so who are we? From one side, we're going to be using Carl Jung here for a little while, for the next 2 or 3. He was, he's from the time of Freud, and he was as good and as important as Freud for humanity, except that he was the one highly spiritualized. And he was actually a medium, and he left a lot of stuff that at the time was not well understood, and stayed on the shelves for a long time, and it's coming back now, you know, in a way that's wonderful, because he's going to give us, now that we're better prepared to understand what he was trying to tell us, this is going to be fantastic. And a lot of people that understand that, including our friend that comes over here all the time, Adenauer Novaes, you know, he is a big fan of, you know, Carl Jung. He said, he claimed that a spiritual life lies buried in the unconscious, and this could be dug up and brought before consciousness. For what? You know, and this is my addition here, so we can work on it. The thing is that he says our spiritual life lies buried in our unconscious. What does that mean? And then I put this little figure here to remind us we have not started, you know, 30, 24, you know, 45, 50 years ago, depending on your age. No, that was the last time we just got reincarnated. We bring with us a long history of development. And everything that we have learned, it's cumulative. And it's saved. It's not thrown away. We don't start from zero every time we come back here. And where is it saved? In our mind. Now, our mind, there's a compartment there we call unconscious, because it's not free to our conscious part. We don't have access to that, and that's by design, because God does not want us to come over here in a reincarnation knowing how bad we were. Since we are all imperfect, He does not want us to go through, you know, or be aware of certain things from the past that would, in fact, not allow us to do a better or a good job this time around. But nothing is lost. It's here in our unconscious part. It's interesting because it's not dormant either. You just are not aware, you're not conscious, but it's not dormant. It defines who we are. We don't start from beginning, from zero. We are what had been, plus what we added this time. So otherwise, everybody would be about the same if we started from zero. And we would never progress because we always start from zero, so that would make no sense at all. So our unconsciousness is influencing big way who we are. Now, in this incarnation, now starting from cradle to today, December the 10th, we have accumulated a bunch of knowledge, okay? And but sometimes the way we live our lives, how much of our energy we apply to our development, how big, or depending on how big our egos are, we get into this darkness. And then Jung says, when it got in there, you're lost, it's time to rebirth, to reborn again. And that's not meaning, you know, discarnate and then come back again. No, talking about, for example, today, 9:30, coming out over here and say, hey, I am going to be a different person. I'm going to find out more about what is not working in my life as a spirit. So darkness has a purpose, just like everything. So the traditional religions cannot be of any use. I'm talking about the traditional religions, unless they connect us with our soul, because that's who we are. And those traditional religions that will not teach us how to add value to our spiritual life, to our soul, it's not doing the job. But thank God we have the doctrine of the spirits on our side. So I go back, just one slide when I said, the more you know, the more you're going to have to deliver, right? We're going to be judged based on our highest credentials. So we are spiritists. We have the doctrine of the spirits, and we know a lot. If you want, by the way, it's there, and we know what we're supposed to do, where we came from, what we are here for, and where we're going to go from here, and what does it mean going. Where is it? What kind of a place? We know all of that, and we also know we are having a wonderful opportunity to work on that. Okay. The soul has a presence and a voice. The spiritual stimulations we experience today are surfacing from the unconscious. We just spoke about that. Hidden from sight and barely discernible. So yes, all that information that we accumulated over, have no idea, a million years, it's there, and it's influencing us. It's always actualized, by the way. Okay, so you'll never remember what you did day one, because that information has been actualized, and it does represent who you are today, including how many years you have lived so far in this life. And when these spiritual stimulations are not able to express themselves, then we start to feel it through symptoms, phobias, diseases. Again, the conventional science, religion, theology are not prepared to deal with that. So science today still believes that mind is something produced by the brains. So they studying that to see how the mind works and how do we think. And the basic assumption is it's all produced by those neurons. Depending on how they're fired together and wired together, then those neurons produce the mind. So we have to go and look for answers from the spiritual world, which is what we do. We can only comprehend the spiritual situation through an arduous and difficult dialogue with the unconsciousness. So, you want to understand yourself, don't ask your ego. They're going to tell you. But I don't think that information is going to help you. And then you're going to say, oh, I already knew that. Right, of course. You live with that ego 24/7, most of the day. To put this paradoxically, we could say that the light can only be discovered in the dark. Right? So to see these lights, we must learn how to see in the dark. So think about it. If you don't try to understand your dark side, right? Those things that many people, including this, Joana de Angelis, will say shadows. If you are not prepared to learn how to understand our shadows, our dark side, then you are perfect. You don't have anything to change. It's all in there. The soul has a presence and a voice. Let's see what's more than that. One. Boy, I don't know what's going on today. Okay, so only in dark times, when we forget the sacred, do spiritual problems loom large and religious contents, disguised as complexes like inferiority, right? Call for attention, forcing us to deal with the inner life. Have you noticed that? It's only during the hard times that you're going to say, well, it's time for me to do something about something, right? And, how many people come to a conclusion that, he should be happy. How come there's this emptiness inside him? He has everything. And then that's the Spirit saying, You never looked at me. You never asked me what I'm expecting from you. You have a lot to do. And yes, you have a Jaguar, you have this, you have that, and maybe you're going to buy an airplane, and it's going to continue to be empty inside because you don't talk to me. And then at those moments, you started to realize that there's something more that needs attention. This is what this first paragraph is saying. The suffering of the spirit forces us to become aware of the unconscious and seek ways to free the inner man. So freedom is going to come from inside out. It's not going to come the other way around, from outside. What culture fails to achieve, we must achieve as individuals. What it means is, there's a lot of, through generations, there's a lot of things that we achieve as part of the collective consciousness. It just becomes practice or just becomes obvious or whatever. And when that fails, it's not an excuse not to work on yourself. So Jung said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. So, getting enlightened is not imagining that you are enlightened and you see all these lights over and above your head, and you seem to be so much, so brilliant, so this, so that. No. Until such a time you work on those bad instincts, on improving your those parts of you that needs attention, you're not going to have, not going to be enlightened, right? So Buddha knows or knew it quite well when he came out of that wonderful place he used to live, away from every poverty or sickness or whatever, and found, whoa, that thing is not life. Here's life. So when the spirit is ignored, it is easy to forget our responsibilities to it. So every time everything is going well, what do we do? Oops, I don't have to do anything. I'm okay. Somehow I accomplished something, or I got to the point where I always wanted to be. You don't even think about it. This is all subconsciously, but it's, as we said a little, bit before, it's the other way around. It's when things seems to be complicated, particularly when you feel unempowered to deal with a problem, with a situation. It's when you say, well, I have to look deeper. So only the Spirit has the power that seeks to transform our lives and connect us to this sacred. Only the Spirit can make us transform. Nothing else is going to bring us the transformation that we need to be at a point where happiness is a state of the Spirit as opposed to a moment in life. The Spirit seeks to link the temporal to the eternal. So, of course, we live in this world, where most of the time, most of the people are always not only materialists, but immediatists. So everything is for now. So, yes, it's okay for us to think about what you're going to be doing for the week, for the end of the year, and how many people are going to please and all that stuff. But whatever we do needs to be connected with the longer term. So the ego doesn't do that. It's the Spirit that does that. The Spirit is the instigator of our rebirth. Insofar as we are made to realize the illusory nature of the ego and become new persons with profound aspirations. So, enough said about the impact or the role of the Spirit in our day-to-day. The ego limitations. So the ego does not perceive the darkness because it's too limited to understand that. So don't trust your ego to help you understand the main issues that you are confronted with, other than perhaps your banker. Even that, if you are going through a financial situation, there's something that justifies that. We just don't know. But the ego doesn't see far enough. So who is going to see far enough? Our spiritual eyes, our consciousness. To the spirit, the ego's enlightenment is a form of endarkment. This is very interesting. The lighter, the more brilliant, the more enlightened the ego, the less enlightened the spirit. Right? Because, think about it. If you are realized as, from an ego standpoint, as again, your spirit is not getting any attention because you don't have to. You don't need to. At least you think like that. But again, we are spiritists here, so I'm speaking this way. But of course, you transform that, you translate that into your particular reality. But it's just normal that the happier you are from an ego standpoint, the less you pay attention to your spiritual needs. So let's not overlook one important fact. The spiritual forces do not go away because you stop believing in them. Okay, so you take a vacation from the KSSF, you take a vacation from thinking about spirits, from thinking about your enlightenment and everything else, and you go just, live the other life, right? The ego life. Everything is going to be there when you come back. It doesn't go away. It's here to stay, and it goes a long way. It's eternal. The power of life and of the spirit. So spiritual forces turn dark and malign when they are not recognized. If they are not allowed to express itself, the spiritual forces, they bring about unhappiness, suffering, and sometimes even violence and disease. This is what we see the most. Right? So a lot of people are into the criminal world, the drugs, so many unfortunate situations. And then at the end of the day, they feel like what? Depressed. Like I guess the next one is going to say. No, but you feel that depression, you feel that emptiness, you feel that somehow you don't feel like you are meeting your objectives, that you are doing what's supposed to do. But at the same time, you have a big job, you have this, you have that. You come to the center, you do a lot of volunteer work, and still not there. Because you are not meeting the demands of ours, of course, including me, spirit. It has a special, this is very interesting. The spirit has a very special relationship with death, right? The ego, there's no relationship with death. Death, when it comes, everything goes away. So it's the end of everything. So the ego doesn't have to worry about anything anymore, right? But the spirit has everything to do with death. The way, we speak about death here, that for us is to discarnate. But there is a life after this that the ego doesn't care about. So whenever you say, I don't believe in spirits, I don't believe in God, I don't believe in life after death, okay? That's your ego. Your spirit is over there suffering, trying to say, oh my God, when is this guy going to wake up? I'm going to survive. I'm going to go someplace. And he's not taking care of me. Here's the thing. We have no real choice in this matter. We either sacrifice some of our egotism for eternal values, or we are doomed to suffer. There is no choice. Now, the thing is, if you believe there is a choice, just be prepared to get desperate when somehow you get enlightened and you say, oh, gee, I was wrong. And then what? Then you have to run and try to catch up. But, you know, there's no turning back. You know, you cannot turn the clock back. And life is, you know, we're not gonna have an extension here for another 50 years to catch up. We're gonna have to deal with whatever is left, right? So it's time to address the spirit. We live in a period of time where the most profound rethinking about existence has to be carried out. But we're resisting this process as much as possible. And, you know, we're not talking about our particular situation, but think about the world. What would happen if all of a sudden everybody would take a day off to think about, you know, their lives? Where do we want to go from here? What have we done so far in million years that have not worked? And what are the things we've never tried, like compassion, right? Something needs to happen, but it cannot happen because we are not allowing ourselves to see the problem. The ego's grip on our world is so strong that we are unable to release ourselves from its tyranny. Well, it's just coming to my mind one situation about 2 weeks ago. Myself and a friend of mine, we were both volunteer work at a given nonprofit organization, and we had this meeting on a Saturday morning in that ONG, we call it in Portuguese, right? ONG. And of course, I had been to his place. You know, it's a huge apartment near. It's in Las Lolas and all that stuff. So there's got somebody to park your car for you. It's, and then of course we went to this place in that particular Saturday. I got in there, and he had already arrived in there with his Porsche. And then I parked in my little car by the side of his Porsche and said, "Well, gee, this is interesting, isn't it?" And this is not the important thing. The important thing is that immediately a voice came to my mind and said, "Can you imagine how difficult it's going to be for this guy to leave all this here? For him, this is heaven. So where is it? Why go to any other place? He's going to be here with his Porsche and in his apartment for as long as he can, right? Even after death." And then I said, okay, so then I guess my take is that it's going to be easier for me to leave my little car and go, you know, to the other place, right? Okay, what's our goal? Now coming back to the central point, which is the Spiritist consciousness. What's our goal in life? There's so many ways we can answer that question, but one very good way is very simple, readily available. It's in there in both Kardec books. You know, it's the Spiritist book and in the Gospel. And in case of the Gospel, it's chapter 17. In case of the Spiritist book, it's going to be the last chapter under book 3. You know, that when the spirits talk about moral teachings, whatever they call it, which is the good person. You know, and this is in English they call it the good person. In Portuguese, kind of a strong, they call the woman perfeito, the perfect man. So, and I think that's strong. But let's live with the good person for now. It's the item number 3 under chapter 17 that starts by saying the truly good person is one who complies with the laws of justice, love, and charity. in their highest degree of purity. If they examine their conscience concerning their own actions, they will ask themselves if they have violated those laws from God, if they have practiced any evil stuff, if they have done all the good that was possible for him to do in that particular day, if they have voluntarily disregarded any occasion to be useful, if anyone has any complaint to make of them and family. And finally, if they have done to others everything that they would like to have done for themselves. So this is wonderful summary that's in there. So am I conscious about me as a spirit in this particular journey? How do I know that? What are the parameters? That's chapter 17. It tells you not who you are able to become in this incarnation, but tells you the direction to go. And here's, starting from the bottom up, is done everything to others that you want done for you. That pushes right back to the first commandment of God. Love each other, right? Okay. Then that same item number 3 goes on, and it's really much longer than this. But I'm just bringing some of the stuff that says that good person have great faith in God and His goodness and in His justice and in His wisdom. So they submit themselves in all things to His will. So we submit ourselves to God, just like Jesus did in that very last moment, right? Actually, His very last phrase was, "Everything is consummated. Here's my soul. I put my spirit in your hands." Also, the good person is always good, humane, and benevolent. Charity guides them in every circumstance. They do not harbor resentments, grudges, hate, the desire of vengeance. The good person never tries to emphasize the importance of their own spirit or talents at the expense of others. So, continuing with the good spirits. Spiritism. I'm sorry, that was the good person, right? No. Good spirit. Okay, so here's the other part then. Spiritism, when thoroughly understood, and above all, when deeply and sincerely felt, leads to the results already explained, which is all those characteristics of the good person, which characterize the true Spiritists just as much as the true Christian, for they are one and the same. So, if you are a good Spiritist, you are also a good Christian, right? But, think of this, the Spiritism, when thoroughly understood, okay, and deeply and sincerely felt. So, really, sometimes we read a lot of stuff without really thinking about it. And here's a situation. Yes, I'm a spiritist, I'm sorry. And I'm also a spirit, but I'm a spiritist. And yes, I read the gospel. Do I understand it? Did I feel it deeply in my heart, in my consciousness? So that makes the whole difference. When Kardec said, we recognize the good Spiritist by his transformation, you see, not by his intent to transform himself. Same thing here. So Spiritism will allow us to have this unshakable and enlightened faith. So it's only here, as far as I can tell, that's going to teach us the difference between faith and rationalized faith. So you rationalize because you develop it, that faith that's now part of you and is unshakable. Nothing's going to take that from you. It's not something that somebody in the school or at home when you were small and say, okay, you have faith, and by the way, you're going to be Spiritist or Catholic or whatever. No, it's much bigger than that. You read, you assimilated, and then you accommodated that inside of you. The true and sincere Spiritist is to be found on a superior level of moral progress, clear perception of the future. Without this, us putting ourselves in the big picture, right? As opposed to this little picture, which is this incarnation. You know, everything becomes a lot more difficult, or maybe easier. But then at some point it's going to get as difficult as, and you're not going to be able to solve it anymore. This is a good one. I like, it is like a musician who is touched by only a few chords, whereas another person hears only sound. So the good spirit is compared here, you know, a musician that there's this song and the person is absorbing all that, the details of that sound from lyrics to every instrument, right? And you absorb that, you are living that, you are enjoying that. As opposed to sometimes you ask, well, do you know that song such and such? Oh yeah, I heard that. You know, what does it mean to you? What do you mean? It means to me, you know, yeah, I heard this song so many times, but I don't, what are you talking about? So it's almost like when I was living in Brazil, no English at all, and I would still love the Beatles song, right? And I never knew what it meant. I just loved it. And then out here, it's different. There's some Beatles, some songs of the Beatles that touch me profoundly. It's completely different. So that does not mean I'm a much better spiritist now. So it's just improved my English. Well, that same chapter 17, in item number 4, which talk about the good spiritist, that part, most, you know, a big chunk of that part is really to tell us the dangers and the how the things a good spirit should not do, and then talks about the things that we should do, like we just saw. But just to give you an put in perspective, you know, what that chapter tell us about the bad spiritists, let's put it this way, just to contrast, so you can see things better. It says, many of those who believe in the fact of mediumistic manifestations do not comprehend the consequences nor the far-reaching moral effects. Or if they do, then they do not apply them, you know, those lessons to themselves. So one would wonder that those that can see spirits would become the great disciples of Kardec in this world, because now they have proof that, you know, there are spirits. Or those that can hear the spirits or feel them. But not necessarily. This is what these guys are talking about. I mean, sorry about these guys. This is the spirits are talking about here. Okay, some key milestones on this big road. We're really talking about moving from materialist to spiritual, highly spiritualized persons. Moving from selfish to altruistic, from pride to humility, from ignorance to full consciousness, from self-centered to compassionate, to fraternal, and ultimately from imperfect to perfect, angelical. That's a long journey, but as long as we are in the right direction, as Chico said, oh no, slowly but surely, you know, to become what I'm supposed to become. So as long as we are in the same path, same mindset as Chico, then we're okay. Okay. Now, everybody is free to design, her own road to transformation. So there's no one particular recipe. If you don't follow, you're not going to get there. You not only you design your own path to transformation, but you adjust it as you go because you learn more, you become better and more aware of what of God and Jesus and the Spirit expects from you. So it's a dynamic process here. But I'll give you some of the elements of it. One is befriend your unconsciousness, your shadows. Don't refrain from talking to them. Don't stay away from your dark side, because it's not gonna go away until you decide to work with them and do something about them. For example, if you are self-centered, selfish, and until such a point you enter in contact with that side of you and then started to work with that, you're not going to make any progress. And then, of course, everybody knows what everybody says. So if you don't recognize your issue, you're never going to be able to change. Well, it's the same thing, right? So learn how to read and interpret your darkness. Okay, so sometimes you think that you are a little bit too perfectionist. And some people say, oh, I'm very perfectionist, and almost as if that was a good thing. Well, what is behind perfectionism? We need to be able to explore all that is under the top of the iceberg. So maybe right behind or underneath perfectionism, maybe you're going to find that you're a very insecure person, that you need everything square and well designed, nothing can go wrong, so you can sleep at night. That's why you're a perfectionist. So gotta learn how to read ourselves and interpret and what to do about it. We've got to practice self-acceptance, right? It's so difficult for us to accept that we do have a problem, or even the idea that we might have a problem. Well, just close the door of your room. Nobody's listening to you, just yourself and a billion spirits, but they don't, you don't see them, it's okay, right? Start practicing self-acceptance. Start practicing self-compassion, meaning if I do have a problem, I don't have to beat myself up to death. All I have to do is to befriend that issue with compassion. Say, okay, I'm not perfect, I knew that. Just like many other people, I do have, stuff to work on. And here's something that's not either bad or good. It's just where it stands right now until it elevated to the next level. Study and get involved. If you don't study, if you don't read, but it's not just reading, okay? Studying. You are going to be dealing with your problems with the same level of knowledge that you had yesterday, and yesterday you were not able to solve it. So if you want to solve your problem, if you want to do something about you, about life, about whatever, your relationship, you have to bring in knowledge. And that you can obtain through studying. Practice and practice and practice and then transform. Everything we learn, all decisions we make, they don't get engraved in our unconsciousness, in our spirit, before you practice it for several times. Our mind will want just say, okay, I'm changing. No. You have to practice it. before it can be absorbed and engraved. All right. Who here ever heard about Ashoka? Everybody know about it, or just one? Okay, who was Ashoka? Okay. Ashoka was the most important, I would say, emperor in India of all times. Okay. And he lived in the year 200, the 200s before Christ, which is about 300 after Buddha. And Ashoka was bloodthirsty. You know, he wants, like all of them, you know, wants to gain new territories, wants to be the king of the world, wants to be the most powerful, just like most, you know, all the others. And the way to do that was to, you know, go and fight and kill the other, call it states or, you know, other what, tribes. I don't know the time how they used to divide there, but you know, territories. Okay, here's the word. So he needed to annex, to add new territories to his kingdom, and the way to do it was to do what? To go over there and dislodge those people, and that normally happened by killing them. Well, one day, Ashoka was, after, you know, doing that in one given territory, he went over there a couple of days later in the aftermath of that massacre to see what he did. And then he was looking about all those corpses all over the place, you know, from, you know, people and dogs and cats and whatever. And then all of a sudden he says, well, he started to feel something. His, you know, like we're saying here, his spirit was trying to tell him something. And then all of a sudden he sees Buddhist monk coming over, just walking. And that monk, he started to think and say, the monk was, you know, brilliant. You know, he has this aura, has this thing that you could see from a distance. He was happy. And then he was saying, I have everything. I'm powerful, I'm this and that. And that monkey, he has the robes, and that's it. And he's happy. How come that can be? And then, of course, he approached the monk and saying, are you happy? The monk said, oh, yes, sir, I'm happy. How did you get there? And then the monk started taking him through the teachings of Buddha. He got really enthused about that. He started to study Buddhism, and became one of the most important disciples, let's put this way, to disseminate the Buddhism. Here's the next slide that says, I know you cannot read, so I just magnify this piece. His vigorous patronage of Buddhism during his reign furthered the expansion of the religion throughout India. That meant that killed so many people. All of a sudden, he became, you know, he spoke to his spirit, he saw the light, and he became this guy that helped spread Buddhism throughout India, and from India to other places around that I forgot here. He renounced armed conquest and adopted a policy that he called conquest of the Dharma, which is by principle of the right life. All right. So that is transformation. Have a nice weekend. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Gilberto. We are just so lucky that we have this opportunity twice a week, to hear these talks. I just feel really so blessed that we have this opportunity, really. Now we would just like to give some announcements for the calendar of what's happening here throughout the week. And let's see. There we go. Next Thursday, we have Carlos Ferreira, and he's going to be talking to us about the greatness and the mercy of Jesus. That would be at 8 o'clock.